What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius and Ryan. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So, come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mershazde, and boy, do we have a special guest. My man, Ryan Pineda, is in the house. What's up, Ryan?
What's up, Darius? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too, my brother. Hey, man, do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping and then we're going to go jam into the show?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So for audience members who are new to the show, we're about two things. We're about people who are living their passions and those who are creating greatness and doing so despite the odds. And my man Ryan here is neither short of passion nor greatness. So I was telling Ryan before the show, I said, man, I've seen you all around. You're all over social. You got some great TikToks. You're all over the podcast world. I mean, you're definitely you have a face that's not too hard to miss, right? and you're good at promoting it. But your face is your brand. You got an interesting haircut. I was like, who's this guy? And I started checking you out, and so it's just been casually following along. I got a lot of friends in the real estate space, a lot of friends in the digital space, and so I had my team hit up Ryan. I said, hey, I want to get him on the show. He's creating a lot of greatness in the world, and man. So pumped to have you here. So pumped to hear about all the greatness you've been building over the years. If you don't mind, I'd love to kind of give your formal bio. And then, dude, here at the Greatness Machine, we're all about origin stories. I'd love to dive into your origin story. Does that work for you, my brother?
I love it, dude. It's funny. I keep hearing the word greatness, and we just had our event WealthCon, and Lewis Howes was the keynote. And so obviously he's got the School of Greatness, and it's just funny. Coincidences.
Dude, Lewis Howes, man, like that boy's got some greatness in him. Yeah, I love greatness, because I'll tell you what, the nexus of this show was I was at this point in my life about, I don't know, 12 years ago, where I had been just grinding to build these businesses, and I built some pretty big businesses, and I wasn't happy. And I ended up doing this one event. It was a TEDx event in San Francisco called TEDx Golden Gate Park. And I talked about it on the first episode of the show. And I said, I'm doing something that has nothing to do with making money, just about people that have done cool shit. And I'll just talk about how they did it. And it was called In the Pursuit of Passion. And we had all these crazy people come and talk. And so eventually, 10 years later, I was like, man, I want to turn that into a podcast. And so here we are, man, talking about the different greatnesses people create. And it's been a cool journey, and getting to meet folks like yourself that are doing cool things. That I can't think of a better way to spend time as far as I'm concerned. So what do you think about that, man? What do you think is your driving force? I'm going to jump into a question, and then I'm going to give your bio. What do you think
Okay.
is your driving force to create greatness? What makes you really fired up to do it?
It's interesting, man. I'll be talking about my bio here soon, but basically anything I've ever wanted to do in my life, I've always been of hey, we're either going to be the best and be great, or we're not doing it at all. There's literally no in between with me. And I've actually thought about answering this question a lot of man, where does that come from? Right. And I think there's a whole bunch of things that come with purpose, and I'm sure we'll dive into that. Purpose is definitely a huge driver for everything you do. And I just think that as long as the purpose exceeds the cost of being great, you will do it. And there's a lot of cost to becoming great in anything, but if your purpose is big enough, you'll achieve it.
I love it, man. I love it. Purpose-driven entrepreneurs, man, make the world go round. So, my man here is a serial founder and entrepreneur, 6 successful 7- and 8-figure businesses, that's no small feat, as we see here on the Greatness Machine. He's on a mission to help people become wealthy without sacrificing everything to do it, which is a very noble mission. I love that. He's flipped over 500 homes and currently owns over 550 rental units. Host of the Wealthy Way podcast, super, super famous, popular podcast out there, and author of The Wealthy Way. We're going to be talking about his real estate deals and all the cool things he's done, as well as his new business, Pineda Media. So I'm super pumped to have you here, my man. As I mentioned earlier, we love origin stories. Ryan, I'd love if you took us back. I know you didn't just snap your fingers and end up here. I want to hear some of the backstory. So tell us a little bit about your backstory, bro.
Yeah, man. So I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur, to be truthful. All I ever wanted to do was play baseball, and I was actually doing that pretty well. I started in little league and did pretty good, and then went to high school and was on varsity my freshman year, and then got a full ride scholarship. Ended up becoming an All American, Cal State Northridge, and then I got drafted by the Oakland A's in 2010 as a junior. And so that was all I ever wanted to do, was just play baseball. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know this, but in baseball, you got to go through the minor leagues. It's not like you just go straight to the show when you're making millions of bucks. And back then, when I was in the minors, I feel like I'm old now saying this, but like back then, we made $7,000 a year in the minor
Yeah.
leagues. And yeah, bro. So I was not balling, even though I was a professional athlete. And
Yep.
so, I had to go get a job, really, but I couldn't get a job because I was leaving for 6 months out of the year to play baseball. And so I was forced into entrepreneurship and side hustles by default in order to pursue my baseball dream. And so, I got my license in real estate in 2010, the same year I got drafted. I was 21 years old, and I was like, well, might as well go sell a couple of houses in the off season, and that should make me enough money to survive during the season, and I'll just kind of
Yeah.
do that until I get to the big leagues. Like that was my plan. Um, but what I didn't know was in 2010, real estate was really hard. You know, Everyone had just gotten wiped out from the Great Recession. Uh, Prices were ridiculously low, which was great if you're an investor, but terrible if you're an agent. And so,
Sure.
I'd be selling a house that had just sold for $400,000 a couple of years before, and it was selling for like 75 grand. And
Wow.
it was brand new. And all of a sudden, it's like I had to work so hard to find a buyer for it because nobody had money. And, even if I did find a buyer, I made like 2,000 bucks. So I did not like being a realtor. I'll just say that. Especially because I knew I was finding really good deals. I was always a hustler and I just couldn't find buyers for them. So I'm like, dude, being a realtor sucks. So I ended up kind of just stopping that after a couple of years. Like I sold houses and I hated it, but I did it because baseball was what I was trying to do. Well, fast
Sure.
forward, after 3 years, I get released by the Oakland A's. I'm a 24-year-old kid who's only wanted to play baseball his whole career. And, basically Oakland says you're not good enough. And also during this time, I am engaged to my wife, and she's going to college to become a teacher. So she wasn't going to make a lot of money. She was just doing that out of purpose. And I'm like, dude, what the heck am I going to do with my life? And so, um, we end up getting married, and I'm like, all right, I got to provide for my wife now. And I still want to try and make it back in baseball. And so I ended up playing 5 more seasons in independent baseball, which is another professional league. And during that time, our first year of marriage, I'm like, I just furnished our house or our apartment, and I spent like $1,000 on Craigslist furnishing it. And I'm like, dude, you know what? I bet you I could sell this furniture for a lot of money, like at least $3,000, because I got such good deals on it. And I was like, well, that's more money than I make right now. At the time I'd given up real estate and I was doing substitute teaching where I was making $100 a day as a substitute teacher. And I was like, well, I bet you if I just sold one couch, that would make more than $100. Like, and that's way easier than sitting in this classroom for 7 hours a day. So I said, I'm gonna test it. So I ended up buying a couch, and I brought it back to the apartment. And Mindy was like, why did you buy another couch? We already have a couch. And I'm like, because I'm gonna sell it. It's gonna be a business. And she's like, okay, whatever. Long story short, I ended up selling it and I made $200. I was like,
Well,
wow, that was so easy, like flipping this couch. And so I was like, you know what? I'm all in. Remember, I said everything I do, I'm all in. So whether it was baseball or business or whatever else, I'm like, I'm all in. So I ended up renting a storage unit. I bought a truck on Craigslist for like $1,500. I was like, I'm buying every couch I see, all the furniture, and I'm flipping this stuff. And so that was like my first real business, because I don't count being a realtor because I hated that. That I was like passionate about. I'm like, I'm gonna build this. And so, the first month I made $1,000. Then the next month I made 2,000. I started to get the hang of it. I made 4,000. Then eventually I made $8,000. And then we're talking net. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like, I'm making $8,000 a month. I'm working like 3 or 4 hours a day. It's nothing crazy. I sit at home and just chill. And then when a good deal comes, I just go pick up the couch and clean it up a little bit and just go deliver it when it's somebody wants it. Like, it's the easiest business ever. And, that was my first successful entrepreneur journey. And to be truthful, I thought we were rich. I mean, like, I was 24 years old, married, balling. I'm like, dude, like, all my baseball buddies, I was still playing, and I was still making, $7,000 a year doing that. I was like, bro,
Sure.
guys, I'm doing this thing like flipping furniture where I make $8,000 a month. They thought I was like the man. So, I do that. But after a
Can
year
I
of
can I
doing
ask
that, yeah,
can I ask you a question? Because as this
okay,
is, I love this part of the entrepreneurial story. Do you remember how it felt when you had your first 10 grand in the bank? Where you're like, dude, I got 10, like that five digit. Do you remember like
yeah.
how good that felt?
Yeah, that actually leads to what happened next. So, I ended up making this money and I was saving up, and then, I spent a lot of it during the season because we didn't make any money during the season.
Sure.
But the following year we're on our 1 year anniversary, and I'm praying and I'm like, God, what do you want me to do with my life? Like, I thought it was playing baseball. That ain't it. Like, I'm making money flipping couches, but I'm not going to do this the rest of my life. Like, there's got to be something else. And I remember him just kind of whispering to me that, like, real estate was going to be it. And I was like, real estate? I hate real estate. Like, I suck at this. It's terrible. And, I kid you not, within an hour, I see a TV commercial like, hey, you want to learn how to flip houses with no money, any of this stuff? Come to our free seminar. And I was like, that's a scam. And, you know, I dismissed it. And I just felt something in me calling me to look more into it. And so I was like, you know what? What if it's not a scam? What if you can actually do real estate without any money? I was like, I'm just going to Google it. So I Google it and I start finding all these books and things on private money and hard money and wholesaling and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, if I find a good deal, I can actually go make a lot of money just by finding good deals. I was like, I'm doing it. So I told my wife, we're on our 1 year anniversary. I'm like, babe, I'm getting back into real estate. But this time we're going to flip houses. And she's like, okay. I was like, okay, here's the thing though. I'm going to have to max out our credit cards to do this. At the time, we had saved up $10,000. Funny you mentioned that
Oh,
because that was
oh,
the exact amount of money we had in the bank. And I was like, 10,000 is like, it's good for us. Like, it's a good cushion. Like,
yeah, yeah.
we got reserves. We're feeling good because we were super frugal still. And but I was like, I'm gonna need like $50,000 to go get the down payment and renovate that. Like, we don't have enough. And I was like, I don't know anyone with $50,000. Like, I'm just gonna max out credit cards and get there. So I applied for all the credit cards in my name and her name, and I got pretty much like $50,000. I was like, cool. So I ended up doing a balance transfer and I get all of it just maxed out. My credit score dropped to like
Wow.
500. Her credit score dropped to
Wow.
like 500, but we had 50K liquid. And I was like, tight, let's do this. So within like a month or two, I ended up finding our first deal. Freaking put the down payment on, get a 12% interest, 4 point hard money loan to buy this first deal. And it was worth it. We ended up selling it in a couple of months and making $25,000. And I was like,
Wow.
it's a wrap. I am flipping houses. If I could flip just like 10 of these a year, I'm making $250,000 and I'm good. And that was my goal. I was like, dude, just $250,000, I'm good. And I ended up flipping 5 that first year. The next year I flipped 20. The year after I flipped 50, and then the year after that I flipped 150. And we
Wow.
just been, cranking flips ever since. And then, eventually that led to, social media and new businesses and education and tax companies and all this other stuff.
That's amazing, man. I love that entrepreneurial story. I always tell people the first 10 grand, that nothing tastes as sweet as the first 10 grand. But Because
Yeah.
you're going from zero, right? Well, like it's exponentially bigger than zero, right? And especially like typically when you put the first 10 grand in the bank, you're probably living off 2 grand a month or something really small, right? So it's a
Yep.
real big number. Um, that's amazing, man. So let me ask a question. And I guess when you were taking that risk, right? Because what I just heard was, I mean, obviously you didn't have a ton to lose, right? I mean that's one of the cool things that 0 to 10 grand, that the floor is not too far below, right?
Yep.
To go and like leverage yourself 5x to go take that chance. Obviously, like that. Were you freaked out, or were you scared, or were you just like, no, I got this? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, people ask about that all the time, and they're like, first off, what did your wife think? Like, beyond what you were thinking. And I was like, honestly, like, my wife, she supported it. Like, she believed in what I was doing. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier about being great. Even though I was young, I hadn't accomplished a lot, my wife did know that when I said I was going to do something, I was going to do it. And I was all in. And so, um, with this, she saw me studying. She saw me like watching podcasts and all these things back then, and I was like fully in. I'm like, I have to learn how to become a great real estate investor. And by the time it came to go buy that first deal and max out the cards, she had seen all the work I put up to that point, and so when I wanted to do it, she's like, "Yeah, like let's roll." And honestly, too, to your point, what you mentioned, like I had nothing to lose. And this is the thing I see a lot of, broke people struggle with. They're like, dude, I got no money. Like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, go get credit. Freaking, it's not hard. There's lots of ways to get credit or raise money. And they're like, oh, but then I'm going to be in debt. I'm going to do this. And I'm like, okay, like at the
Just
end of the
so.
day, everyone's in debt. Like, freaking, you know how much debt I'm in with all the real estate I own? Like tens of millions. Like, I want to be hundreds of millions in debt, you know? And I'm like, there's no difference between a credit card, a mortgage, a student loan. It's debt. It's all the same crap. Like, are you using it to make more money? That's the question.
Right.
And, when I looked at it, I was like, look, worst case scenario, this all flops and I'm totally wrong. And like, I'm going bankrupt. And at that point, whatever. 2 years from then, I'll recover and I'll start again. It is what it is. But if I just stay on my current path and do nothing, then there's no chance for any upside, right? But with this path, if I am right, the upside is life changing. And so, like, the risk versus the reward, to me,
Yep.
it just made like no, I'm like, dude, the risk is so minuscule compared to the reward that why even, like, this isn't even a choice.
Oh, total no brainer. So it's funny. I was just before our call, my wife's cousin calls me. He's graduating college next month, and he's taking a job in New York City. And I had a conversation with him because he comes from a pretty well-to-do family, and he has a lot of options, right? And he's like, a lot of my friends are going to work on Wall Street and this, that, and the other, and he doesn't know what he wants to do. And I said, hey, man, listen, this is really simple. When you're in your 20s, do whatever the hell you want. Take as big of risks. Try everything you can try, because your 20s is when you have the ability to make big mistakes and then
Mm-hmm.
recover from it. You don't want to take the safe path now. Now's the time. I mean, you don't want to hear what I really tell people. I had a lot of activities that are high risk into that. That's what I tell most 20-year-olds. I'm like, go do all the risky stuff. Go travel. Go hook up with a bunch of people. Go have the best nights of your life. I do. I swear to God. I'm like, your 20s is
Mm-hmm.
when you go do that.
Mm-hmm.
Go start companies. Go fail companies. I was
Yep.
25 years old. I built my first company that ended up being number 40 in the Inc. 5000 when I was 25. Okay.
Wow.
And I was, dude, when you were just telling your story earlier, I'm like, no, you're telling me my life back to me. When I was in my 20s, I was like side hustling like crazy to be an entrepreneur. This is before the word side hustle even existed.
Yep.
This is like 20 years ago. So I think what you did was the right thing. I think where people, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this for young people. I think that a lot of young people, they are brought up around risk averse parents, because the reality is this: most people are reckless with money, or they're risk averse, or a combination thereof, right? That's like the average human out there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your upbringing was. I was brought up with an entrepreneur, so I saw someone being an entrepreneur and taking risks, and I was like, oh, I'm like, I can't hold down a job, right? Like I don't want to be told what to do. So for me, that seemed pretty natural. So what do you think? What do you think, like young folks, younger entrepreneurs entrepreneurs, like what advice do you have for them, you being someone that took a lot of risk in sports? Because I see the correlation. You're an achiever, you're an athlete, right? You were taking risks. Dude, working for 7K a year is just so we're clear here, everybody, that's like $600 a month, on a little lower actually, right?
Yeah.
So like that's like a really expensive internship.
Yep.
But you were doing it to follow your dreams. So you were. It sounds like you're a risk taker at heart. You just applied it in these different ways. But what's your advice for young folks or people that are afraid? Like, what are your thoughts around them taking those chances?
Yeah, I'm very risk taking even to this day, right? What I will say is the more I've studied it, the more like I've realized parents and how you're raised play a big role in this, right? Like,
Sure.
the more I study about how like kids, your first 10 years of life are really imprinted on. And so it's like, as a dad now, it makes me like, man, I got to really be there those first 10 years to instill the beliefs and values and things that I want them to have for the rest of
Sure.
their lives. But yeah, my parents, it's interesting because they were both entrepreneurs. My dad owned a convenience store and my mom was a realtor. That's why I ended up a realtor, just because I was like, oh,
Mm,
well, she works when she wants. Cool. But they both lost it all during the Great Recession. My mom pretty much
wow.
lost all of her clients. They lost rental properties. We lost the home that we grew up in. My dad lost his store. And, in 2010, when I became, a working adult out of college, their mindset was drastically different. We were in a totally different world. They did not like entrepreneurship. They were looking
Mm,
for normal jobs that were safe and secure. I remember my mom would tell me, she's like, look, if baseball doesn't work out, you need to go work for the government. Like, get a government job. That's like the
ooh,
safest job ever. And at the time, I was like, whatever, I'm gonna make it in baseball. It doesn't matter. But like I've never had a real job. Like I just was always an entrepreneur and out of default because I was a baseball player. But
sure.
what I will say is like, life is short, man. Like the older you get, the harder it is to take a risk. So
Yeah.
once you got a spouse, you got kids, it gets harder and harder to keep taking risks, and you have less time to recover from a mistake. So now, if you're young, you literally have no excuse for not taking risk. If you're scared now, you will be scared 10 years from now. But the only difference is you'll have 10 years of regret built up, which will then paralyze you even more, which will then just make you have more depression and all these other things of, man, I wish I would have did this, right? So,
Yep.
even when I was playing baseball, I remember I was always taking risk, like tinkering with my swing, trying to figure out like, hey, is this the best way to swing? Like, what if there's a better way that can unlock more power and consistency and like take me to the next level? Well, I want to test it and figure out if there is. I'm not satisfied just with the status quo, because if the status quo was good enough, I'd be where I want to be, which I wasn't. So I'm obviously missing a piece and I got to test to find it out. And so, if you're trying to build a business, number one, you're going to take risks. You're going to test things. You are going to fail. And that is just all part of the process of finding success.
Yeah. I love it, man. You just reminded me of three different things. First of all, there's a great book. There's two books. One, Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and then the other book is Good Money by Ken Honda. And he talks about, and Ken Honda's great, or Happy Money, excuse me, by Ken Honda. He was on. I found him. He was on School of Greatness with Lewis Houses we were talking about earlier, and he talks about what you just talked about, which is as people age, their risk tolerance. Well, let's take this back. As people make more money, then they can become afraid to lose the money because you have something to lose. You're like, oh, if you think you're risk averse when you don't have anything, imagine if you have a lot. And we interviewed James Altucher on the show last week, 2 weeks ago, and James and I were talking about this, and he said, look, like there's three different skill sets around money: making money, investing money, and keeping money, right? And they're all three different things. So there's plenty of people that are good at making the money. The next two are the hard part: keeping it and investing it so that you can keep it, right? And so I think that kind of segues into your mission, which I love, man. We were talking about this earlier. I'm a core value driven, mission driven entrepreneur. My last business, our mission was to help 1 million people gain and retain home ownership. And it took us 9 years and 4 months to do it. And we hit our millionth person literally in August. So 1
Wow, that's
million
amazing.
of our customers. Yeah, we did 1 million loans through
That's
my business
crazy.
because I was a large mortgage servicer and lender,
Mm.
and they hit 1 million. It took 10 years to do that. So I'm a big mission guy. I learned it from Simon Sinek directly. Start with Why guy. Met him 14 years ago, and that was my introduction to mission. So your mission is to help people become wealthy without sacrificing everything to do it. What does that mean? Walk us through that. Where'd you come up with that? What's that mean? What are you trying to do with that?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been Lewis, since we're talking about him, just wrote a new book. And he talks about like having just like your mission, and his is to basically like help 1 million people. I forget the exact wording, but it's this really big mission. Actually, it might be 100 million people. I can't remember. But yeah, I've thought a lot about the mission and how all of that ties into like the bigger purpose of why I'm even here on this earth. So, to backtrack a little bit, I wrote a book called The Wealthy Way, and that's obviously what the podcast is called. The book came out 4 or 5 months ago, and it's been a bestseller, and it's doing great. And the reason I wrote the book was because I've been running all these businesses, I've been making all this content. I've done a lot of different things in my life with just lots of different things. But probably the thing that I'm most proud of and that people ask about is they're like, Ryan, it looks like, just because you show it on social media, like, your relationship with your wife and your kids is great. Like I've always told people, I'm like, I don't work weekends. I'm home I leave the office every day at 5 o'clock. I golf every Friday, and my businesses and my social media and everything continues to scale and explode, despite working less than the competition. And I'm by no means like retired. I didn't have a huge exit or anything. Like I'm in the early stages of my career. And they're like, but and also too, like you take care of your health, you're going to church, you guys hold these weekly Bible studies. How the heck do you do all of it, in the way that you're describing? And I was like, man, that's a very tough question to answer. There's a lot that goes into it with your schedule and your goals and your priority and, all these different things. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write a book detailing exactly how I do it. And so that's what I did. I ended up actually making a course first called Wealth Builder Academy that I gave for free. Like we have education companies. Our education company is an 8-figure business. And like I could have sold it and did fine. But I was like, I just really want people to understand this message that life is so much more than money. Most people follow me because they want to learn how to make money and run their business or invest in real estate. And that's great. But like, why? What's the point of making more money? Right. And a lot of people will tell you, oh, well, it's to take care of my family, to do these things. And I'm like, okay, so that's the real goal, right? Like, how much money do you really need to accomplish that goal? Do you need a $10 million business, like, to really do that? Would your family rather have more of you today than, saying, hey, I'm gonna sacrifice the next 10 years so we don't have to do any of this, for the rest of our lives? And I just don't believe that. Like, I believe that you can build really successful businesses while still having massive success in your family, while still being strong in your faith and serving, while still maintaining great health and just having this well-rounded life. And so that's what The Wealthy was all about. It was breaking down how, at 33, I've been able to do all of that. And, just like all the way from schedule to how we set goals to, how I run businesses, skills like delegating, principles like 80-20 rules, principles like Parkinson's law with compressing time. And so it's been a really, like, I would say it's more of a, there's a lot of tactical things, but it's really to help you start thinking different. And part of it is, as I've gotten older in business, we were talking beforehand about just different masterminds and organizations. But, I'm in a ton of masterminds. I'm in real estate masterminds, social media masterminds, big business masterminds like YPO. And like, the common theme I see amongst all successful entrepreneurs, not all, but majority, is they got jacked up lives. Like they're having
Yeah.
extreme success in business, no doubt about it, but they're on their second marriage, their third marriage. They're out of shape and fat. The kids don't know them. They have no faith whatsoever. And I'm like, dude, I would never in a million years trade lives with you. You know,
Yep.
like your life sucks, truthfully. And so the hard part is when everyone tells you you're the best and you're so great, and then you really feel like you're dead inside because everything else around your life sucks. It becomes a problem. So I'm trying to normalize like the pursuit of, just being wealthy in all areas of life, not just business.
Oh, I love that, man. We were talking earlier about a friend of mine, David Osborne, he talks about the 7 gardens of wealth, right? Which is what I'm hearing you talk about, and one of which is financial wealth, right? But there's so many more: emotional wealth, family wealth, friends wealth. I have a good friend. Do you know John Vroman, Front Row Dads? You know those
I don't
guys?
know. No.
You should check that. You'd love them. But
Okay.
there's a lot of really interesting folks that are in Front Row Dads. A lot of people you probably know, and he's a great friend of mine. And his whole thing is, business. It's basically family men who have businesses, not businessmen who have families, right? And it's around this idea of putting the family first. And I'm a person. I'm a little bit older than you are, and I'm a person that did it the old way, which has spent the first 10 years of my family life, probably less than that, maybe more like, 10 years, because I was 2019 was when I exited my business, grinding, but slowly, like, and I'll tell you what does it. One of the downsides of having a 10, 12-year economic run like we did is when you have a big run like that, everyone's negative habits get reinforced, right? Oh, hey, you're a genius. But you haven't had a recession to punch you across your fucking face to show
Yeah.
you that you are that, like, dude, there's all the dead bodies are hidden, because everyone's a genius. I joked about this in Tiger 21. I'm like, everyone's smart. No one's stupid. If you buy something, it just goes up in value because that's just how it is, right? Um, and so we haven't, and people's memories are very short. We're programmed to forget bad stuff, right? And so it, I did what you did, but mine came the other way, which was I was working 6 days a week, obsessing about work. And then I realized when I lost a $10 million company, no matter how hard I worked, it didn't make it better. And I gave up all these weekends. I'm like, I can't give those back. And so I
Yep.
said, I'm not working weekends ever. I'm taking vacations. That was my first thing I did. Now, I still worked a lot, but I said, yeah, 50 hours is good. I can put in 50 hours a week. I'm fine. When people
Yeah.
tell me they work 100 hours a week and brag about that, I'm like, I would never brag about that. That sounds terrible, you know? But I
Yep.
see there's no correlation between working harder and making more money. There's none. My friends that have the most and make the most work probably the least.
Oh yeah.
And so, and when you see that, you're like, whoa, like that's an eye opener. When you see people crushing it who don't work that much, and you're like, uh, this is not what I was taught. I was taught work hard, because I always had a great work ethic. So what do you think about that? Like, why do you think it is that you're able to have success in all these different areas and that actually drives more success in your business life?
I think there's lots of reasons, right? So, number one, when you're fulfilled in the other areas of your life, it's going to make business better, right? When I don't have to worry about my wife being pissed at me every night, or, whether I miss my kid's baseball game or whatever, or, I have to worry about, I feel like crap because I just didn't sleep last night, or I'm just feeling out of shape and sluggish. Like, I will inevitably perform better in business when all those other things are taken care of. So that's
Yeah.
number one. Number two, I think that, when you're really limiting yourself, it's actually a good thing, right? Like, and this goes back to Parkinson's law, and for those who don't know what it is, basically, if you give yourself a certain amount of time to do something, that's exactly the amount of time you'll take. So if you back when we would get assigned stuff in school, it's like, hey, this is due next Thursday. What do? Wednesday night. You just cram it
Right.
and get it done, and then you turn it in Thursday, even though you had a whole week to do it, right? But if they would have told you, hey, this is due tomorrow, guess what? You would have got it done tonight if you're a good student, and you would have just got it done. And so what I always say is like, look, this is my schedule. I am working Monday to Thursday, 9 to 5. That's it. Friday, I'm golfing, right? Saturday, I'm hanging out with the fam. And whatever gets done, gets done. Now, me as a competitive person who wants to be great, I got a lot of ambition and things I want to get done. But now I think about it through a different lens. I'm like, well, dang, if we're going to launch this new company and we're going to have this event and I got this guest on the podcast and I got, this thing we're doing and I got this important meeting, like you start to make decisions much better and you start to trust people more because you're like, look, at the end of the day, for me to do all of this, I need to trust other people to do it, right? I need
Sure.
to figure out what I absolutely have to do that no one else can do and then delegate the rest. And so that's basically where it's at now. It's like everything is very efficient where it's like, I don't want to be in a meeting. I don't want to be bothered. Let everyone else handle that. Hit me up if you need me, right? And I'll just do the things that I know I have to do, right? There's no AI Ryan right now that can do my podcast yet. But
Yeah.
that maybe at some point, right? Like I won't even have to do the podcast and be like, dude, we know exactly what Ryan would say. And like, who knows, right? So for now, I do exactly like what I only can do. So I think you become more efficient when you place limitations on yourself. Don't think of limitations as like governors, but it makes you more innovative. When people know they have 80 hours to accomplish a task, guess what? They're like, well, if I don't work 80 hours, I guess I didn't work hard. So I need to like do busy work. And I'm like, dude, that ain't it. The other thing is with rest, right? Like, so I'm a Christian. I talk about my faith a lot in business and, God told us to rest and, no matter what you believe, okay, like we all ended up on this earth some way, somehow. And we've got to answer about what's going to happen when our time's up, right?
Sure.
But what I know is God told us that we need to rest. That's why he created the Sabbath. And maybe you don't need to rest a whole weekend, but definitely one day a week. And I don't think that God told us to rest because he just thought it was like some good idea. He's like, I think you guys need it because you idiot humans are going to just keep going every day nonstop. And you're going to actually be worse off for it. I think that,
Mm-hmm.
The 30 hours a week I work are the most efficient 30 hours that I could possibly work and probably in the 0.01% of the world for how efficient it is. And then I would say like the 80-hour a week people, they don't even get done what I get done in 30 hours, right? They might get done freaking 10% of it, right? So it's just like at the end of the day, I think my 30 hours are efficient because I have proper rest. If I was just tired and sluggish and going through the motions and every day felt like Groundhog's Day, I would be like, oh man, dude, I'm just not as good. Like I'm not in it today. Versus when I take a
Yeah.
whole weekend off, I'm like, I'm itching to get back in the office. I'm like, hey, that was cool. Time with the fam was great, but I'm ready to go conquer now.
I love it, man. So let me ask you a question because you've made this transition from, couch flipping, baseball to couch flipping to real estate flipping to building a portfolio real estate. Obviously, you've done a lot of work there. I found it pretty fascinating. And myself being a person that literally, I would say, dude, my analog Rolodex is ridiculous. Digital was like non-existent, right? So I was like no audience, nothing, no nobody. I launched a book that I spent 1,500 hours on my book launch, and they're like, you need an audience there. So I'm like, I don't know how to get one, so I'm just gonna go work I'm gonna go do it the old school way. And it was successful, but it was not as successful as it would have been had I had an audience. And I said, man, I need to build an audience. And then I went and started messing around in the digital world, and my introduction to it was Clubhouse, right? So this is like early 2001 or 21, excuse me, when Clubhouse was exploding. And I get in there and everyone knows each other. I mean, it was like a reunion of all these digital creators all just like hanging out, and half of them I think were making up how much money they make and lying. It was like, I was like, this is like,
Yeah.
I was like 7-figure this and 8-figure that. I'm like, let me go look at this person's business. I'm like, I don't think they, and I start talking to them about business. And I'm a person that I had a business with 1,000 W-2 employees that I built from the ground up. So I'm like, I know how to build a company. It was a $200 million company I built, and I bootstrapped that thing, right? So I'm like, well, let's talk business then, and
Yeah.
then I'm talking like they don't know business.
Yeah.
So I thought it was kind of funny, but I was like, man, there's a lot of there's a lot of fake, and then obviously there's some real in there, but it was interesting to see the digital world. I'm like, man, this is a whole different world, and it's such a gap between the analog and the digital. You've been so successful being able to ride both, straddle both fences. So tell us, like, I'd love to hear about this because I think that there's a huge movement, and I think you'd be naive to think that digital is not the future, right? It's going to all be digital. Some people maybe want everything to be digital. I don't think that's fully realistic, but things are all moving digital. It's amazing to just see how quickly, using Moore's law, every 18 months, we're like doubling in speed. And you see this happening where more and more stuff is being done digitally, being done online. Now it's being done on blockchain. Now it's being done, in the virtual worlds. And now we have AI and ChatGPT and all this stuff. Like, that is, I mean, some of it blows your mind because you're like, how do you even keep up with it? But how did you successfully transition into the digital world? Love to hear about that.
Yeah, man, I am such a big fan of digital and tech, and big believer in Moore's law as well. I mean, like I geek out over that. Like I'm not a tech guy. Like I'm a big vision guy. So like tech responds to like when I see Chat GPT and just like each iteration of it, I'm like, holy crap. Like I'm a big believer that real estate and the blockchain are gonna just merge
Boom.
here at
Yeah.
some point and be massive. And like when I look at like, hey, what can make me a billionaire? It's like having digital presence and big ideas like that. Merge those and you're in. I have an NFT project called Tykes where really like that's the focus. And so like I've already immersed myself into that side of the game as far as business goes. But
Nice.
as far as social media goes, I think that's the precursor to having great success digitally in anything, right? Like most of these digital businesses and things require influence and being able to get attention. And, I've heard the analogy that, attention is the new oil and like it's the most valuable resource in the world. And I agree. Somebody explained it to me like this, and this is not what got me started, but as I was going through it, it made me like even more encouraged. But they were like, look, obviously the US dollar, they can just keep printing it, right? It is what it is. Real estate, we like to say is scarce, but at the end of the day, like there's lots of land. We can keep building and growing new cities and just expanding and all that stuff. But the one thing that's fixed in everyone's life is the 24 hours. That's
Mm.
the only thing. We all have 24 hours. That is the only truly fixed thing. I don't care about what people say about Bitcoin and everything else. It's the 24 hours. That's the fixed thing. And we assume everyone's going to have to sleep a certain amount of time. We assume everyone's going to have to work a certain amount of time per day. And so, like, there's this fixed amount of time that people have for discretionary attention, is what I would call it, like to go actually spend and consume content of their choice. And I use content broadly because anything that you're going to consume with your free time, in my opinion, is content. So,
Sure.
I'm not competing with just other podcasts. I'm competing with Netflix, with Disney, with Facebook, with, the sports game. Like that's all competition for these hours that are available. And so, if you want to say like people have 4 hours a day to spend, discretionary, um, that's fixed. And that's why so many companies are spending so much money on content creators, creating original content, all this stuff. And I see that trend just continuing. I think every company is going to have some kind of studio digital space. Like they're going to have to. So long term, I think it's super important. Now, why did I get into it? How did that happen? Well, I was flipping houses and I was very successful at that. That's how I became a millionaire. And, I'm sitting there during the pandemic. This is back in 2020, locked up for no reason really. And just like, what am I going to do with my business and my life? Like, I got like 50 house flips right now. And if things all go south, like I'm going under, right? Like, that is what it is. And I'm like, well, I guess, I mean, I can't go outside and I can't go to the office and I can't go on appointments and people don't even want to sell their house right now because nobody knows what's going on. Like, I literally have nothing to do. So what should I do? And I just remember sitting there online and I started watching YouTube. At the time, I never watched YouTube really. I just was like, well, I got nothing else to do. Let's see what's going on. And um, I had some people tell me, they were like, bro, you should create YouTubes. Like, you could make good content. You got a lot to say and everything else. And I was like, who are like, who do you even like watching? Like, I didn't even know watching YouTube was like a thing. I thought you just go there to learn how to tie a tie or whatever. Like, I didn't know people watched it as like content for
Yeah,
consumption.
TV. Right.
Yeah. And so they're like, oh, well, go watch this guy, Graham Stephan, and meet Kevin and all these other guys who are now my friends. But I'm like, okay, I'll go watch them. I'm gonna see, like, I wonder what these guys are doing. And I'm thinking in my mind, they're like these big business guys, but then, it turns out they're young guys like me. I'm like, okay, like, I wonder what kind of business they're running. And then I realized they're not even really running businesses. Their business is content. And I was like, wait, this is the real estate guy and he has like 6 homes? I don't get it. Like, this is where everyone gets their information from. This makes no sense.
Right.
And I was like, okay, hold on. If these guys can do it, no shade to them because they're ultra successful at what they do, but like, there's no way I can't not do this. Like, so, I ended up starting to consume their stuff, and I saw how much they were like, they did posts. They were like, yeah, I make $300,000 a month off YouTube, just YouTube. I get
Wow.
AdSense and I get sponsors. I was like, he makes $300,000 a month net with no employees, no risk, from his house, making a 10-minute video. I was like, I'm in the
That's
wrong
insane.
business. I was like, I'm in the
Yeah.
wrong business. Like,
Yeah.
I seriously spend so much time finding a deal, convincing someone to sell it to me for a low price. Then I got to go raise capital, go fix it up, go list it. It takes me 5 months to finally get paid. And granted, I'll get paid good as long as the market stays good. And I'm just like, I'm in the wrong business. And so, it was during that time I was like, screw it. I am going to create content. This is the future. It makes no sense not to do this. And so, during the pandemic, I got on TikTok. No entrepreneurs were on TikTok at the time other than Gary Vee. Like, nobody knew
Right.
what it was. Gary Vee was like, TikTok's going to be big. TikTok's going to be big. And I was like, you know what? I think it's going to be big. Like, I'm on it right now and it's addicting. And so I was like, I'm going to just learn how to dominate this like style of content, but for entrepreneurs. So I got on TikTok. I started making 2 a day every day by myself. I would edit it on the TikTok app on my phone, post it. And, in a couple of months, I had a few 100,000 followers. I was like, this is nuts.
Wow.
And then I got on YouTube in May of that year. And I was like, I'm going to make videos. I get it. Like, I took Graham's course. I took Kevin's course. Like, I just once I understood there was a blueprint to it, I was like, oh, okay. Like, they make the thumbnail and the title are super important, right? Like, the idea is super important. And, you need this during the video and that during the video. And that's how you're going to grow. I was like, cool. So I just started making YouTube videos, and then, it all just kind of scaled from there. Eventually started a podcast and, got on all the platforms. And to this point, I think across everything, I've got 2 million followers. And I think, we're close to 1 billion views online in just 3 years.
Wow.
And so, I've learned a lot about media, and like, I knew it was going to be big and important when I started. And now, 3 years later, I'm like, holy crap, everyone needs to do media. Because I just look at the opportunities I'm presented on a daily basis with like raising capital, new business opportunities. I make a post about like one of my coaching programs or an event, and it like literally is like a slot machine. Like, I make the post and then money hits the bank. And I'm just like, this is freaking, it's like imaginary money. It's crazy.
That's insane, man. So for new content, I know we're almost near the end of the show here, and I want to respect your time. So if you were starting today, what would be if you were to start doing content this moment? Obviously, it's a new moment in time. There's a lot more content creators. What would you do right now?
Well, I think there's 2 things, right? So, I'm assuming this is for entrepreneurs,
Sure.
specifically. The one thing I think about with content is you got to always think about the person watching it in mind. Okay. So I need to not think about my own agenda and what like I want to do, I need to say, hey, for the people watching my content, what is it they want to see, right? What are the problems that they have? How can I help them better their lives? And if I can do those things, I'm going to get views because I'm creating valuable content. But I'm also going to have a pulse on the products and services that they need. And I'm going to be able to capitalize on that if I'm a good entrepreneur. And so, like, that's why I keep starting new businesses, because I just keep seeing the need from my audience. Like, they tell me, I literally get the DMs and they're just like, bro, like, what do I do here? What do I do here? I can't do this. I can't do that. Anytime that's, I'm like, okay, the market's not addressing this. I need to do it. So, like, like one of the first things we did was start a CPA firm. Now we have hundreds of clients. It's called True Books. And, it's for real estate investors and small business owners. And like that business year over year has been tripling. And like, it's been just crazy the amount of growth it has. And I literally like never talk about it. It's just people know I have it and they just keep signing up. We have $0 in marketing spend the last 3 years
Wow.
to grow it to a multi-7-figure company, soon to be 8 figures. So,
Wow.
and that's a recurring revenue business. Like the clients are super sticky, which is great. Like another one I just started is called Pineda Media. So, basically I knew that every entrepreneur who's listening to this, like, but at this point you're like, yeah, I need content. And the problem is most don't know where to begin. It's the same question you just asked. You're like, where do you begin? And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, there's so much that goes into it, right? Like I just explained a little bit about knowing who's watching, but you need to know, hey, what am I trying to establish myself as the expert in? Hey, like how often am I willing to post? What platforms? What's the strategy? Should I go broad or niche? Like there's all these different things that play a role into going viral and establishing yourself as an authority. And so basically I was like, you know what? We'll just do it for them. Like it's like at the end of the day, there's such a huge demand for it. So, basically like we launched this new company where now we'll post for you. We'll literally hop on a Zoom with you and film on the Zoom and coach you through the filming session. We'll take all the raw footage, edit it, post it, everything, full service. And then we have an education platform that is 3 calls a week to help you just get better and better at just learning the science behind creating content. And it's like I didn't think I would ever start that business in a million years, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like it's such a huge demand, and it's like once again that's a recurring revenue business. Like I think that business could be I think that could be $1 million a month recurring revenue business.
Wow. That's amazing, man. Dude, you're just crushing it. I love it, man. And I love the pivoting and the iterations and solving a lot of problems. That's really what I'm hearing, is that you're just a guy that really cares about solving problems and helping people, and the results are speaking for themselves, man. So, dude, keep crushing it. I love everything you're doing, Ryan. It's cool to hear and cool to learn more. Seriously.
Yeah, bro. No, it means a lot, and I'm glad we got to connect.
Definitely. If people want to learn more, I mean, there's a lot of different places, a lot of different reasons to hit you up. What would be the best way for people to connect, to learn more about the different projects that you're working on or the different businesses? Lay it out there. We'll put it in the show notes. Make sure that folks can connect with you and your teams, and we'll get you out of here, man.
Yeah. If you go to ryanpineda.com, you can see all my businesses and all that stuff. If you go to wealthyway.com, we have a ton of free stuff. Like we have a quiz you can take to see if you're living the wealthy way, and what areas of your life you're deficient in, what are your strengths, where you can get improvement. We got free courses on there. All my podcasts are on there. So yeah, that website's just like a ton of free stuff. We even created a software for a daily planner so that you can create a great morning routine and track all of your goals and progress and stuff. So we got a lot of cool tools.
Awesome. So we'll make sure, guys, check out wealthyway.com. Check out the book, The Wealthy Way, the podcast, The Wealthy Way, and
Yep.
ryanpineda.com. Is that what you said?
Yep.
ryanpineda.com?
Yep.
All right, cool. Listen, everybody, what a blueprint for being a badass and creating greatness in the world. My man Ryan here is just crushing it, and so much to learn here for people that want to go out there and do the same. With that said, my man Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. Appreciate you. So much gratitude from us at the Greatness Machine. You rocked it. What we're gonna do is anyone that wants to really learn more, go and check that out. We'll put all these links in the show notes. Until next time, peace out, everybody. We love you. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.